Right.
Second heart attack.
That is our signal that it is time to start. And we have a change of venue because of bands on the bricks, whatever. And we were talking that people may have been on their way to the meeting and then seen all the fun and decided to take a little detour and spend the evening having some fun. But thanks to everyone who's joined us online. I see Paloma Delgadillo from City and County of Broomfield. We've got some county staff online as well. Dale Case, who's our Director of Community Planning and Permitting, and Steve Durian, who's our Public Works Director. We're just starting. You're fine. But I thought we could go around the room and introduce ourselves in case we don't all know one another. And we'll start with Christine over here, who's going to be presenting. But go ahead.
Good evening, Christine Obendorf. I am the Deputy Director of Engineering within the Public Works Department.
Danny Harmon, I'm Deputy Director of Transportation Planning within CPNP.
CPNP.
Sorry, Community Planning and Permitting.
Thank you. Taisha Adams, Boulder City Council.
Mariah McCreary, Trustee for Lions.
I'm John Kane, I'm the Town Manager in Netherlands.
I'm Beth Fahey, I'm City Council in Louisville.
Lindsay Neville, I'm with the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging.
Carol Cross, Division Manager at the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging.
And Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Megs. I'm Boulder City Staff here with Councilman Bowman.
And Claire Beatty, Boulder County Commissioner.
Nick Robles, Policy Analyst in Boulder County.
I identified all of you, but if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, Dale, go ahead and start.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dale Case. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Permitting.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Steve Dury, and I'm the Public Works Director for Boulder County.
And now we've had David from Lafayette join us. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. David Friedland with Lafayette City Council.
And Paloma.
Hey, everyone. Paloma Delgadillo, Broomfield City Council.
Great.
We have more. Okay.
Do we? Oh, we do. Yes. Yeah, I've got the better view. Sorry. All good. We have Miguel from Erie. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. I'm Miguel Aguilar, coming from you from the surface of the sun. It's so bright back here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you look great.
Thanks. Town of Erie Principal Transportation Planner.
Thank you. Judy?
Hi, good evening. Judy Kern, City of Louisville Council. I'm just listening in. Deb's going to be the voice for us tonight.
Okay. Glad to have you. Ken?
Yeah, Ken Lenarsic, Town of Jamestown. Just.
Thank you. Eden?
Yes, Eden Bailey. I'm the Division Manager of Older Adult Services for the City of Boulder, and I'm just listening in tonight.
Okay, did I miss anyone? All right, I don't think I did. Great, thank you all for joining us. So we have a couple of the main topics on our agenda. And well, we're going to start with an update on the countywide transportation sales tax. For those of you who have been on the consortium for a while, this is it's an annual presentation. So we have had a dedicated 0.1% sales tax for transportation in Boulder County since 2007, I think. In 2022, the voters extended that tax, and instead of making it for a finite period of time, we asked if we could collect it in perpetuity, because they always said yes when we asked if we could extend it. So they did say yes, so attached to the resolution that sent that to the ballot, there's a list of projects, and we developed that project list collaboratively with the municipalities in Boulder County. What are your priorities? What do we need to do? And I'm not going to say anything more about it because that's why Christine and Danny are here. But one of the things that's built into that is to make an annual presentation to the consortium. And if this instance, we'll eventually reach the end of this project list, and then this body is going to help repopulate that list and tell us what our next priorities are going to be. It's going to be a long time. So I'll probably pass my term of office, but the consortium, because you all do represent all the municipalities in Boulder County, can help us figure out what our next 15 years worth of projects will look like. So with that brief introduction, and also just explaining, Taisha had the question of what's CP&P. So community planning and permitting has our transportation planning division, and Public Works does all our road maintenance and road construction. And not everything that is in the sales tax is operationalized by Public Works, but they do a large portion of it. So the two of them are going to make a presentation to us. And what do we have? We have until 6:30 for that. So go ahead. Oh no, yes, until 6:30.
Would you like me to stand or sit? Or
I think more informal.
I was going to stand. I'm like, I feel like this is informal enough. So, thank you for having us this evening again. Christine Obendorf with the Boulder County Public Works, Danny Herman with Boulder County Community Planning and Permitting. And there. So briefly, we'll kind of go over the transportation sales tax, which Commissioner maybe did a little bit of that. Kind of the project highlights in the last year since we presented last June, what we're anticipating for this coming year from now until like the next time we meet with you again. Some of the transportation master plan report on projects highlights, and then some time for questions and discussion. And you know, we encourage all of you to talk to your staffs as well and have them communicate with Danny or ourselves or any of our staff to let us know if there's anything that was on the original list that needs to be changed or updated, or something that's on there that we need funding sooner than thought. So with that, get into that. So as we went into here, you know, we have this 0.1% countywide sales tax that is throughout Boulder County. It started in 2001, extended in 2007, and fortunately the voters extended it. And it focuses on multimodal safety and resiliency projects, regional corridors, so things like State Highway 7 or State Highway 66, and then transit services and programs, regional trails and bikeways, and transportation mobility programs. It also supports any plans that we do for the our staff does as well. Here we kind of have a little bit more descriptive of what is all entailed and who is all involved and what it kind of has looked like from a visual standpoint.
And sorry to interrupt you. Do we have this in this presentation already?
A lot of this.
I saw some attachments. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. I was like, oh, I want to, and I was like, oh, maybe I can look.
The presentation, I don't think we sent out a memo. We can send it out.
Okay, no problem.
And everything in the presentation is in the memo.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, and actually, so this image, the graphic on the right, where we have those 3 little small PDFs, that's much larger within the memo itself. And it is basically a replica of our 15-year transportation sales tax list that was in the ballot this year. We have split it up so about 55% of it goes to safety and resiliency, 5% to mobility programs, local transit support is 15%, regional trails and bikeways about 15%, regional corridors 10%. That's based on the revenues coming in, and it will, and sometimes it ends up looking differently when you look at expenses, because a lot of these we're using leverage with funding grants or partners to help make those dollars stretch. This is something that we used in the trying to like drum up support for the sales tax of where all of these items are and what they encapsulate. We have our corridors in green and blue, which are either bikeways or like a NAMS corridor, which I don't know what the acronym stands for.
Northwest Area Mobility Stuff.
Thank you. That's Danny's expertise. And this the different projects that we have going on from here, 2024 to 2039. So to summarize what that looks like, we have 50 miles of new paved shoulders, 52 miles of regional trails and bikeways, 35 miles of transit service, 6 bridge replacements, 4 new pedestrian underpasses, 8 intersection safety improvements, and then the planning studies, programs, and matching funds to go along with that. This is quite an aggressive list. One thing that Boulder County prides itself in is not adding lane miles, but if there's an intersection that needs turn lanes, or if we wanted to add shoulders for bikeways, that's our priorities. So on road safety and resilience, that's where the engineering division comes in with Public Works, what we oversee, and it's more of those roadway type of projects. So something that we just completed support for was Lafayette South Boulder Road improvements. That was pretty exciting to have that done. That was $4 million that came from the sales tax that went directly to Lafayette. Longmont's Colorado 6 improvements made to Hover Longmont. That project is probably a little bit more on a pause situation, just because partnerships with the land developments and adjacent to that project got going as had hoped. Boulder County itself, we completed construction of the Sugarloaf Road culvert replacement at Plummer's Gulch. This is anticipation of the county's project to look at the restructuring of the road itself, as well as adding bike shoulders up to Batasso. And 95th Street intersection improvements at Lookout Road. And we were able to leverage this with some federal grant funds. And we just started construction on 120th Street, safety and shoulder improvements in Lafayette. We actually postponed that project by about 2 years, just trying to give a little relief of construction fatigue for Lafayette, although I'm sure they're still pretty frustrated for the closure there. But and then we have some continued design of several things that moving on, including Eldora, East Conline Road, which we're partnering with Weld County on for a roundabout. And then, as I mentioned, Sugarloaf reconstruction, looking at design going forward. We have, my goodness. We've started support as Superior came forward. They were ready to receive money on Marshall McCaslin intersection improvements. So that's in our budget this year to have that. And then Longmont is looking to move forward on construction of their East Conline Road project from Highway 66 to 17th Avenue. And moving forward, it's kind of like a rinse and repeat, continuing the design of many of these things, completing the construction on our 20th. We anticipate by the end of the year. Next year, we hope to start construction of the intersection of 61st and Belmont, which also includes a little tiny piece of the Burt Trail where we just speed them across the road. With that, I'll leave it to Danny to talk about all of the wonderful things that this group does.
Before you do, Danny, Crystal, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Do you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Yes. My name is Crystal Prieto. I am the at-large city council representative for Longmont, Colorado. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry for my tardiness. I'm a little slower these days.
Understood. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, Andrew. Could you please introduce yourself as well? Mayor, I should call you Mayor more. Yeah, maybe he can't, but we do have the Mayor of Erie. There we go.
I'm just trying to get my audio and video back on. Andrew Moore, Mayor of Erie, happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, glad you could join us. Okay, sorry, Danny, go ahead.
No problem. Thank you. So yeah, to carry over from some of what Christine was talking about, these are some of the things we've done on the transportation planning side. So with regional corridors, one of the biggest ones, continued construction on the Colorado 119 project and associated bikeway. Construction is expected to be completed on the full corridor in 27. The bikeway, hopefully later this year, will be open, or at least mostly ready to go. CDOT was awarded $11.5 million for median barriers along 287. That's one of the corridors we have a lot of crossover crashes in that area, and so the median barriers will help prevent that. And other things continued supporting the cities of Louisville and Lafayette, 42 corridor planning efforts, contributing to the CDOT-led design for Colorado 7 and 95th intersection as well. More of the corridors that we have coming up, continuing construction on Colorado 119 through the year. We're working on phase 2 of the Southwell Road corridor planning study. The phase 1 was funded by Dr. Cog. Came up with a high-level vision, so we've advanced funding to get into a little bit more detail on that. Working with CDOT to advance the design and hopefully anticipate construction in 27 of those 287 projects. Design of the superstation, and working with CDOT on advancing the Colorado 795. Some of the trails and bikeways, we completed the underpass of the BNSF Railroad on the 4-mile Canyon Creek Trail and Cottonwood Trail. That was a very long time coming project.
2007.
Yeah.
Wow.
They joked that that project was almost old enough to drink. So luckily I wasn't around for the whole thing, but I did get that open recently. So yeah, recently the construction of the Chapman pedestrian bridge connecting to the City of Boulder Chapman Drive trailhead. Logo J Road design is done. That project is very close to going to construction. Again, design of the Boulder Erie Regional Trail or BERT, which will be continuing. Same with North Foothills, and we did also last year open the completed construction and opened the Lions portion of the Safe Frame Greenway Trail. So coming up for regional trails and bikeways, like I said, construction of Lobo J Road, that project we're hoping to advertise in the coming months. There is a little bit of time thing with work in the ditches that could be constrained to the off season for that. Providing local match for the Superior Hawk crossing of McCaslin. Continue design on Burt and North Foothills as 2 of our major projects, just advancing those. North Foothills just recently had an open house in Boulder to look at that, so we're happily advancing both of those projects.
Do we have a decision on that most recent grant request for the North Foothills Trail?
So North Foothills, no, we just recently applied for Safe Streets and Roads for All for a new grant. We were highly recommended last year, but didn't get funded, so they encouraged us to shrink it. So we shrunk the scope a little bit just for a phase 1 and reapplied. So we're hopeful for that. We did on the Boulder to Erie Regional Trail get awarded, I think, $515,000 from the Rural and Tribal Fund available. So that's going to help advance the design back. Over transit stuff over the last year and continuing service on the Lions Flyer, Ride Free Lafayette, Gold Hill, Mountain Rides, and Flex Express. We initiated the statewide transit plan to linking Boulder County, or the strategic county transit plan linking Boulder County. We anticipate wrapping that up roughly at the end of this year. We have reached an agreement with the Colorado 7 Starter Service. This was a 2-year project funded with match from a lot of the jurisdictions along Colorado 7 and through Dr. Cog. And RTD has agreed that they're going to operate that for us. And we're looking to start the advertising campaign later this year and hopefully get the starter service operational before the end of this year as well. We did just launch the Ride Gun Barrel and Ride Southeast, or we just awarded those. they should be operational hopefully within the next couple of months as well. So some of the mobility programs that we've been working on, we had selected the Boulder County Southeast Hub in Lafayette as the Accessoride Certification Center. So those of you who don't know, to be able to ride the RTD Accessoride, you have to go to Denver to their certification center, and it kind of turns into a whole day thing. We're hoping by having some availability up in this area, it will make that a little easier for folks. So again, hoping that can happen sometime this year to get that open, but we selected the hub. We've met with the staff down there to figure out where that'll be located. Now it's a matter of getting the equipment, and then once RTD finalizes who will be doing those certifications, then we'll work with them to get that open, hopefully later this year, possibly into 27. We worked with Boulder County and installed covered bike parking at Wilby Corner. We completed a 2-year Safe Routes to School multi-generational bike project, provided 110 bikes and equipment. The Lafayette Elementary School families did see a few other things on there. We're also kicking off Safe Routes to Schools Vision Zero program, looking at 5 Boulder Valley and 5 St. Vrain Valley schools to help look at what some projects might be to help encourage and provide safer options for students to commute there. Haven't held our Mobility Heroes campaign, which has been very popular, recognizing some local mobility heroes, transit providers, other assistance providers, things like that. Some of the things upcoming in transportation mobility, we're going to continue implementation of things from the community, the Coordinated Human Services Plan, continue to convene the Mobility and Access Coalition. The certification appointments, we're hoping to start with 1 day a month at the Southeast Hub once we can get that kicked off. Again, kind of seeing how much need and support there is, but we think that'll be a really nice thing for folks on the north end to not have to spend that day in Denver. Additional bike programming, the Mobility for All Ambassador Program, the volunteer ambassadors has been a big success for us. And then the neighborhood Eco Pass programs that we've been doing, had a lot of success there, and some of the business Eco Pass as well. So we just recently had a graduate student help us with a study on the business Eco Pass subsidy program to see highlight areas where we can maybe try and reach out and find more underserved businesses. So that's something we're hoping to do in the next year as well. So. Might be the next slide might be. Okay. That's right. So some other planning exercises, the Vision Zero plan, we completed in coordination with Superior and Lafayette. So we all now have accepted Vision Zero plans for the county and those jurisdictions. We recently did a report on progress on the Transportation Master Plan, presented that to the county commissioners yesterday. That'll be posted on the website here shortly. And then the Safe Streets for Students, as I was saying, that's underway, and the Dr. Cog Livable Centers needs assessment framework for Boulder County Housing Authority is also underway. So I wanted to highlight, as Christine was mentioning earlier, one of the things we do really successfully in Boulder County is leverage those dollars from the sales tax. So these you can see in some of the cases here. Overall, from the sales tax, a little over 11 million went into these projects that delivered close to $100 million worth of improvements for the county. You know, some pretty large projects, $25 million raise grant on 119, over 53 million through the Dr. Cog tip awarded to the area. Some NAPME funds, the non-attainment air pollution mitigation. Is that I got most of those right. Trying to remember off the top of my head, but that's going to help out with a number of different projects, a couple on 119, and then some other ones throughout, and some TDM work that we're doing, transportation demand management. So anyway, a number of different projects where we've been able to leverage those sales tax funds to bring in additional funds to the area.
Okay. Discussion, questions, answers? Yeah.
I'll start us off. First, thank you. This is wonderful information, and I'm glad to see how much the county has accomplished already in improving the transportation in the county. So I got a couple of questions. So first, on you're talking about e-bikes and electric cars. Do we plan any charging stations for them? And I was thinking like putting charging station for e-bikes at the schools or at the bus stops so that they can, get from here to here and then go where they want to go.
So I don't know that we have any planned specifically at schools or those. We do have more bike share with the, that's going to be rolled out larger throughout the county area. I know there's, I don't know where all those are going to be, but I think from Longmont down to the southeast, there's a number of different places. And then we are working on some charging at some of the Boulder County Housing Authority locations for vehicles. So again, more targeted there. I don't know about any other plans to roll out more general. More often than not, those are done through private enterprise. And I don't know if the county's working on that. I'm not aware of anything else to roll those.
I know the city of Louisville has approved the possibility of putting in an EV charging station, like a gas station, but it's for EV charging. So we haven't had anybody accept us on that, but we'll see.
So what I was going to say is our Office of Sustainability, Climate Action and Resilience, OSCAR, got some grant money to do EV charging, and we're trying to, this is part of our Justice 40 and equitable access work of trying to make charging, and it's EV charging, it's not bike charging, but to, just make it more accessible to people that live in apartments, multifamily.
Right.
Yeah. So, it's not directly responsive to what you're suggesting, but they may, depending on where you're wanting to do those. Those charging things. Well, people may have some money. I don't know.
I'm thinking about like at the RTD stops, the major stops to have charging. Okay, the next question is would you have any information on the timeline for the updating and expansion of Highway 42?
I don't know. I know that we're working, putting some funding out there for the study, but it's primarily being led by the local jurisdictions. So no, I don't know a lot of detail at that time, unfortunately. I can ask if they have an update and get back to you.
Okay. Then the next was Access-a-Ride. I think that's a wonderful opportunity, and especially since we just learned that RTD is probably going to be eliminating the 228 route through the city of Louisville. And so without the 228, how do you get to the bus stops? So that would be a request, I guess.
Question. I'm curious about geographic distribution of projects in the west part of the county. And obviously there's municipalities there that have different projects, but St. Francis School has been a priority for the Netherland Middle School for some time. And then there's some other projects throughout the peak-to-peak region that I think are pretty critical that are identified in the Vision Zero. Do you have thoughts about how those projects will be treated in the new planning effort?
Say new planning effort.
Like when you start working like with the new sales tax and like what will be in the pipeline as we kind of move through that period?
I don't have a great answer for that. I mean, I think as we continue to advance, we work with all the local jurisdictions to, figure out what the needs are. So we have the current 15-year list, which will probably take at least 15 years to complete, probably longer. So if you're talking about expanding on that, that would either be after the end of this 15 or the new sales tax comes.
Many projects on 119 in that, between Netherland and, Jamestown and those kinds of places. And so I'm just curious about what that looks like in the county spaces kind of around our towns and everything.
Yeah, I don't know if you know of anything in that area, but I think a lot of it we rely on is the local jurisdictions. They're going to tell us if some other projects are ready, if there's other funding sources, or to try and advance those. Otherwise, we just kind of go through, with the Vision Zero, we highlighted a number of potential projects, but we haven't really started initiating most of those.
I don't know if there's much in the region is kind of a bigger point, but I appreciate your answer, so thank you.
One thing that Netherlands has had on the list for a very long time, and it continues to be on the list, is that connection called the County Road 130 connection, I think, from Netherlands to the high school. But I believe there's some geographical and probably land use.
I did receive $1 million grant just recently to work on that project, and
Wonderful.
it's extraneous to Netherlands too, so I think it crosses county line as well, and so if there's opportunities, that'd be great, but I understand that, you know, you're project with some other kind of thing too, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got some, that's been sitting there on the list, and I don't.
Since 2007.
I'm not super familiar with it, but I thought there were some issues with a private landowner that may not be.
I've got it under control, but
Okay.
I have a little bit of money, but I think we would just love to be considered in that space.
That's great news. Something that we should know, because this some of these projects sort of sit there and we think, oh, the local jurisdiction isn't ready, but there was a problem, and now we know that maybe there's a change, and we ought to reactivate that. The commissioner did just meet with Danny and Christine yesterday, and you know, what they shared with us is we program a couple of years out, so you know the funding commitments have been made pretty much through 2027. But because these projects just take some time, you know, we can, you guys can talk about how to get this thing moving forward. I know the Eldora Ski Road is another one. I met with some public works staff, and they were really excited about getting planning effort going on that, looking at solutions to that road.
You guys mentioned the North Foothills Trail. You shrunk the scope just for phase 1 to get grant funding. I'm curious what that new scope looks like for phase 1.
The phase 1 construction is basically just the first mile. I think it's just over a mile from the south end. I'm trying to remember exactly what that connects to, but it doesn't get up to, doesn't even get us to Neva, but it's roughly, I think, a $12 million project or whatever. It was kind of in the scope of what they told us, so that's what we applied for in there. And we get more details, but yeah, we're pretty optimistic on that.
Great.
Yeah, that one we also, first time around, we were able to get some money that the governor had that they set aside from that, and to do part of the local match plus the local match that will come from the sales tax dollars. So, you know,
we did again DOLA through their program offer. I think it was another $1 million again.
We feel like when we bring a lot of local money to the table, it positions us better to get these grant funds. But we are, basically there's like 3 segments of that whole bikeway, and the southern segment, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it does have the highest injury rate along there, so that's why we would start on the north end of Boulder.
Yeah, the bulk of the injury and fatality accidents were in that first segment. So that was part of why we highlighted that and chose that segment.
And this was somewhere on a website, right? The plan?
We have the North Foothills website and the open house. Yeah, I can share that information to you.
Oh, Taisha.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. A couple of questions. One, so the list is from until 2039. And so that's 3 years. So I'm curious, you mentioned, Claire, that this group helps to create that plan, that addition, that new list. I was just curious what the process was for last year. I don't need that information at this moment, but it would be helpful, just like, did it take a year or 2 years? Like just kind of getting an idea of the time frame and time commitment, certainly since the city of Boulder has an election coming up. So just want to make sure like this is the time to have these kind of conversations with them. So that was one. I don't need to have that information at the moment, but I'm curious unless you happen to remember off the tip.
Well, it's not, So I don't, I think, the consortium didn't create that list. I don't believe that was created more, staff to staff. I mean, including all the jurisdictions, because we do have projects in all the jurisdictions. I think the ballot language called for, once we work through that whole project list, which takes us, it's 15 years from when it passed, which is 2022. Then we'll work with the consortium, is my understanding, to add projects to the list to take us out for the next 15 years. So we're talking, I think the sales tax actually was going to expire. What did it expire in
The new
2022?
took effect in 24, so that's why it's 24 to 39 is the 15 years.
Okay. So we've got, quite a few years.
The next question is around, so I noticed there was a mix on the grants that were obtained. And there was a mix of federal and state, so like, I can't remember, I think it says 87 million. And I was curious, just from the current state of our federal agency, like all of that has been secured, we don't have to, did they, or is it like promised? Just what the status of those federal contracts are that were on that particular 87 million.
I would say all but 15 million of that is pretty secure.
All right.
I don't know if we've been pushing on, but most of that is, a lot of that is formula funds that comes through Dr. Cog and other grants that we have received. And the $125 million grant, we've received 10 million of it. And I think there's some question about the other 15, and that's that our electeds have been making sure they're aware of that.
We've let all our delegation, our congressional delegation know about that. We've met with the US DOT about it to talk with them, and we'll see if any of that is effective. They just said it's under review. It hasn't been revoked. So we're in purgatory right now, I guess.
Okay. And then just curious about like projected versus actuals, like are projects coming in under, over, just trying to get a sense of the, are we underbidding? How are you all feeling about that?
It's a mixed bag. Interestingly enough, so I'm going to speak from not only the transportation sales tax projects that engineering has been put out, but also those that we fund just for the county itself through the Road and Bridge Fund. And a lot of the construction projects we bid for this summer actually came in lower than anticipated. However, they also came in before we went to war with Iran. So we were fortunate in that sense. I don't know if they'll creep upward.
Now, are they tied to the bid that they bid?
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are. So it really can be a mixed bag. I was shocked to see so many of ours come in under the engineers of probable construction costs, but pleasantly surprised, I would say.
Okay.
And I guess I'll say that on the list, those are 2022 dollars. So we always anticipated those increasing. Unfortunately, construction costs often increase faster than sales tax receipts, which does leave a bit of a deficit. So I think it is a mix. There's also, when you do a 15-year planning effort, some things change. So I know there were some projects on there that were planned to be grade separated. Then when you go out, you discover there's issues with drainage or something else. So instead you just do pad grade improvements. So that may be a lot less cost, but not exactly the scope that was originally planned. So all those changes factor in. So in general, I would say we're expecting the list to continue to increase because they're $22, but we always shoot for the savings wherever we can. And it has been mixed thus far.
This last question is, so I looked at the colorful list that you had, the three more closely, and it's hard to get a handle on like what percentage of the list is complete. Right? I mean, I need a bigger number. It's hard. They're not anymore. I need a bit better sense. Do you have just the back of the envelope? What percentage?
Oh, percentage.
Our commissioners asked us for that.
Well,
That was just yesterday.
we need to read, and we need to read, but also when people ask me, and I know they will, and Megs, we can say, oh, about 70%. You know, because there's only 3 years left, so that's where I'm kind of curious.
So I don't think this is in any of the packets this year, maybe. I don't think
I didn't see a spreadsheet like that.
it would show up as it wouldn't show up as a spreadsheet, it would be. So this is like, I don't think this is in here, but we have looked at what has been completed.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Can we get
2007.
that as a PDF? I think that would be really
We
helpful.
could do that.
Just that one.
But you can kind of see we're down like, as of last year, let's say 2020, from 2025, 64 projects completed since 2007. Out of the sales.
Now, that was out of the 2007 sales tax.
And
list. So
some of these are 2022.
Yeah, so when you're looking at the more recent list, I would say you're gonna see a lot fewer in the completed, so that's why I think maybe only 3 of the ones off of that list are completed. But you'll see a large portion of them are underway, but we can definitely, at the direction of our commission, we're already working on that,
Awesome.
so
Thank
we
you.
will get those numbers to you. So
That's all my questions. Thank you so much.
Fairness to them, we just asked yesterday, so, yeah, we'll go for a couple days. All right, well, we're a little bit behind, but I know this is always a really interesting topic for the consortium, and we're always happy to share all the work that we're doing, but also all the work that is represented on here, almost all of it actually does reflect work of your staffs that are partnering with us to do these projects in your jurisdictions. And we really appreciate that. So the other thing so we have folks from our AAA, the Area Agency on Aging, and we thought it would be interesting to bring them in light of the demographer's presentation 2 months ago on where demographics of Boulder County are going, and Nick sent the state demographer's presentation again just as a reminder of what we saw. And the big takeaway I think that we had a little bit of discussion on is the fact that our population is aging, and what does that mean for Boulder County and services and lots of other things. And that's what's going to be the meat of our discussion tonight. But we've got Lindsay and Carol here to just share with everybody just some of the work that they are doing, so we know how we're serving our seniors now. If everybody doesn't know, so Boulder County does have its own, were you gonna talk about this, the structure? Yeah. Okay, then I won't. So I'll just actually let the experts talk about what they came here to talk about.
Okay, Nick, you can go ahead and take it to the next slide. Again, my name is Lindsay Neville. I'm the Aging Policy Advocate and Planner for the Area Agency on Aging, and that means I do a number of things. Communications, you might get our Aging Well in Boulder County newsletter, a lot of strategic planning, some which is to remain in compliance with the state, some just for fun. A lot of work with data and political advocacy. So there are a number of hats that I get to wear on behalf of older adults and caregivers and to serve folks in Boulder County. So I watched the presentation that you all got from the State Demography Office in April, and I just wanted to follow up on some of that and bring us back to that. So I worked for the city of Boulder before this too, for 12 years now. I've pulled down some of that raw data from the SDO and have been looking at it in different ways for across the county to look at impacts and population changes. So I typically start off with this slide right here. This orange line is your 60+ population in Boulder County projected growth. The blue line underneath that orange line is your 60 to 79-year-olds, and that bottom line is your 80+ folks. And what I want to point out is really about our 80+ population. From now to 2050, that segment of our population at 80+ is expected to grow from about 12,000 to just under 35,000 individuals. Now, I am not saying that the needs of folks who are 80+ are homogenous. However, we know that as we age, things like our mobility change.
right? And the kind of supports that we need in home, and the kind of supports that we might need from long-term care, which include assisted living and skilled nursing, can change. And that if we're looking at a population shift like this, we should expect a growing number of those needs across the population. Nick, next slide. This is a slide that I look at in the background a lot, but never in a public presentation have I talked about us looking at a younger population, a younger demographic. So again, this is State Demography Office data that I've looked at in a few 20 and 20 plus year chunks of population. What you can see here is that for 80 plus population, we're expecting a 202% increase from now through 2050. And you're expecting a decrease in some of our younger populations. Never would I ever say you should fund one population and not the other. There's actually a lot of commonalities between these populations. If we think about a caregiving workforce, some of our most valued, respected, loved, but underpaid and overworked folks are early childhood professionals who are helping us raise and educate our children. It's also the people in long-term care facilities who are helping keep people healthy and active and fed in those communities, right? So there are a lot of commonalities on how we can help each set of population, our younger and our older folks in Boulder County. So that's what I wanted to share about that, but you can see those differences. Nick, we'll take the next one, and Carol.
So you might be wondering, if you haven't seen a presentation like this before, what is an area agency on aging? So quick snapshot. We are mandated by the Older Americans Act, which was signed in 1965, really focused on trying to increase and improve quality of life towards the end of life as we age. The Older Americans Act is one of our sources of funding, as well as state funds for senior services, as well as Boulder County general funds and some particular grants. For example, we have a federal grant from the Department of Justice Office on Women to address, train, respond to abuse in later life. We provide a variety of services that are really designed to support aging in community through the continuum of that, right? We know that aging is not homogenous, it's across 4 decades of life. And so we're really trying to support that independent aging on our own in the community of our choice. We have a mandate to advocate for services that support older adults and caregiver in community, a mandate to plan for and coordinate a continuum of services throughout Boulder County that support these objectives. And we do a lot of outreach to try to let folks know what we do and what our partners do. And we always say we're the best kept secret. People don't unfortunately know about us sometimes until they really need us. But we keep trying to sort of expand our outreach and awareness about what we do and the folks that we serve. Next slide, please. You asked if we were going to talk about the structure. There are 16 AAAs in the state of Colorado. Some of those are broken into subsections. So you'll see we have a total of 14 areas. We are 3B. So while we are a part of Dr. Cog has its own AAA, and Boulder County has its own separate AAA. As you can see, we've got some other divisions around there, but right above the Denver area, that's where we are. We work together closely on what kinds of trends we're seeing, legislation, funding, which has been a little tough in the last few years, to just try to leverage improvements across the network. All right. So I think what we really wanted to share, or is this yours? This is yours, fine. I'll give you this one. This is your turn.
So one of our mandates from the state is to conduct an area planning process and put together an area plan every 4 years. So we'll have an area plan due to the state February 1st, 2027 that will cover us July 1, 2027 through June 30th, 2031. So we started talking about this back in January and getting prepared. The state can be pretty prescriptive in the types of questions that they want us to answer. And because we're already undergoing a planning process, we've expanded it so we can meet some of our unique needs and answer the questions that we have about the community and our responses to the community.
So an example is the state asks us to hold 3 community conversations as part of that mandate, and we hold over 30. And a lot of that is because of our work with our municipal partners. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But it is data driven. We use our client data. We're using our community conversations data. We use information from the state demography office to help tell the story. The area plan helps us lay out our funding and service priorities. All of those area plans from each of those AAAs across Colorado come together to inform the state plan on aging, which is a mandate which they then send to the feds. It helps us look through service delivery strategies and set our goals and objectives for that 4 years when it comes to using that funding that we get from the feds and state and using it in a compliant way. Nick, I'll take the next slide. I just mentioned those community conversations. They're top of mind right now because they're ongoing. Yes, it's an overwhelming slide. I hope Nick sent it to you already, but you will get this information. I had a conversation earlier today. I was at Wanaka Park Assisted Living in Lafayette talking to 18 residents there about their experiences with living in long-term care. We'll be in Lafayette Friday at the Lafayette Senior Center having a conversation there. We've also been in affordable housing sites. I'll be in Golden West on July 1. But yeah, there's these 31 conversations happening where already we've engaged 118 people, and I'm sort of projecting we're probably going to hear from 300 people. Alongside that, we're doing some client calls this time. We're looking for folks who have a higher number of needs, what we think about as activities of daily living, the things that are crucial to remain independent that may be a little bit more difficult as your mobility or cognition decline, right? So we're calling folks who are more likely to be homebound to hear about what their experience is with service navigation, service needs, getting those needs met, or if they're unmet needs, through those phone calls and bringing that information together. The next part of that is talking to service providers. Every 4 years, we have what we call a key informant survey where we talk to service providers across Boulder County who are helping in the aging and caregiving spaces to see what they're hearing from clients and their families about those gaps in services and what services are going really well, what's available. So maybe next one, please. Timeline for you so you can sort of be ready for the product when it comes. We're working on our community conversations and key informant survey right now. We'll be collecting and distilling, Lindsay will be collecting and distilling all that information and hopefully before your short departure in August.
I'm pregnant. Yes, July. July is analysis time.
Yes. And then while Lindsay is out, we'll be working on drafting goals and objectives. We have an aging advisory council that will help us, as well as some of our regional network partners, to really say what are the things that we want to work on in the next 4 years? How are we going to move the needle on some of these service priorities or gaps in services? We're hoping to get a work session sometime in November with the county commissioners to review where we're at, our initial drafts. This year, new to our process, the state's mandating a public input session, which I think is really, really smart. So we'll be posting that for public comment for a month before we get into our final drafts, which I think if you go to the next slide, we have all sorts of other deadlines that the state has in terms of their final dates and when they're giving us feedback. All to say, we're working really hard until November to get as much feedback from the community to inform what our next 4 years look like out of our agency.
And SUA means State Unit on Aging. That's who we answer to at the state. And I think one other thing just to hammer home is that, we have fed, state, and local funding sources, and there are chances that each of those are going to decline or continue to decline over time. So it might change how we prioritize the services that we have in the community, whether we're directly providing the service or funding the service for people. So we're hoping that the community input helps us drive those decisions.
That's it from us.
Thank you. And what I was going to say about the fact that we're in Dr. Cog, yet we have our own AAA, is that, you know, we really can tailor the services to Boulder County needs. And because Dr. Cog is a huge region. And, you know, we have, and some of the other jurisdictions share this, but we have an aging population in the mountains that have different service and mobility needs than those that are aging on the plains. We have, well, I know we run, and hopefully still run, some programs that, you know, really are tailored to populations that are underserved in Boulder County that we want to serve, that we would not really be able to influence if we were part of Dr. Cog. So I think we're really fortunate to be in this situation, and looking at that map, I think Larimer, Weld, and Pueblo are the only other single county AAA.
Good inventory quickly.
Yes,
I think you're right.
So we really are fortunate in that we can really match the services to the needs of Boulder County. It doesn't mean we can serve everybody, because we do have constrained budgets, but that's what we have. So I did invite Carol and Lindsay because of the bulk of our conversation could be about here on just what are we seeing in each of our jurisdictions, and how are we responding, and what kinds of conversations come up around aging, issues maybe with declining workforce. We know that the declining school population is a big one, but in addition to looking at what's going away, you know, the growth in the aging population is driving all kinds of different needs that the AAA will be responding to. And so just before I open the discussion up to the floor and the screen, Paloma, did you have some materials from Broomfield that you wanted to share before we do that?
Yes, I did. I wasn't entirely clear if we were doing presentations, so I brought one just in case. So I'd love to present it if,
You're welcome to share it.
Wonderful. Okay, I will go ahead and share my screen. And it's a quick one, so won't have to play the music to kick me off the stage. So I wanted to provide some insight from Broomfield, and it's really variations on a theme. It really echoes kind of what you all are seeing in Boulder County as well. So for us, we have an estimated population to grow to almost 80,000 this year. Very exciting. And our full built out number looks like maybe 110,000 by 2050. Kind of similar here, we have currently 31% of our population is 25 to 44, 21% is 17 and younger, and 17% is 65 and older. Our movement, probably similar trends you've been seeing. It's been caused by net migration and folks moving from other parts of Colorado and also from other Western states in the US. In terms of kind of more things that we're seeing, we've seen household stability has led to natural aging in our community. There's been a 125% increase in the 45 to 64-year-old population. And I think we win this one. So lucky us. The 360% increase in the 65 plus cohort of folks. School-age children now comprises a smaller share of the total population, so very similar to you all. And then working age adults, they'll remain a key component of our population, but not necessarily making up the bulk of folks around here. We've also seen demographically, 70% of our households consist of one or two people. So household growth is kind of outpacing the population growth on account of that declining household size. So these are kind of global trends we've all been seeing. And then for us, so this is all forecasts are wrong, but hopefully this one's close enough and good for planning purposes. But future conditions in Broomfield, they'll be shaped by demographic structure, household composition, and several other factors. We expect the population and employment labor force population to continue to grow through 2050, though at slower rates. Aging is the dominant demographic trend. Our senior population is expected to reach 23% by 2050, and folks under 18 will comprise 16% of our population. Household demand will continue to be influenced by factors like aging households, smaller household sizes, those sorts of things. And then labor force growth is expected to slow. So again, we still anticipate that growth. It's just at that declining rate of growth because of that slower growth of the younger age population. So all of these things are interconnected, and we're certainly interconnected with you all. So some things that we're doing, we launched Broomfield Together, which is a coordinated update of the 2016 Comprehensive Plan and Mobility, the Transportation Mobility Plan. So similar to you all, we're soliciting that feedback, trying to get in touch with the community to help mold a plan that'll guide us for the next 10 to 20 years. And then we also established new zoning options to permit greater mix of uses, smaller lots, more housing variety, higher densities, and ADUs. So in Broomfield recently, I'll elaborate on that. We recently passed, not tiny, but we decreased the minimum lot size of a single family parcel. We also created a new R7 zoning category because we see a lot of those big apartments that come in. They have to go into the PUD designation for zoning when really we could have a nice out of the box thing for them. So that higher density R7 zoning gives them a tool for that. And then back in 2020, we adopted an inclusionary housing ordinance to require residential developments to contribute to our inclusionary housing for the community. So there are a certain number of units set aside at below area median income to accommodate a wide variety of people who live in our community, including young people starting off their careers and aging seniors. And then, of course, I think given these demographic shifts, we do care a lot about business development. So we've been investing quite a bit in attracting really high quality employers to kind of keep that tax base strong and keep opportunities strong in Broomfield. So the list of things here, super fun. We love it. And then there's been a lot of interest in healthcare facilities in Broomfield. There are actually 2 hospitals who are going through our current process right now along the I-25 and Colorado 7 corridor. And then we had a joint meeting with Adams 12 and BVSD. The loss of students on account of demographic shifts and other trends that were accelerated due to COVID. Those are things that we're looking at too. And I think that our school districts have been engaging with the community, which is lovely to see, to move forward with the best solution possible. So that's us, that's in Broomfield. So thanks for letting me take a moment to present.
Yeah, thanks, Paloma. That's really interesting. And it's great to, as a foundation, to lead into the discussion that we wanted all of us just to have together around what are we seeing in each of our jurisdictions around these special needs. And Danny, if you want to go, you're welcome to stay. But what are we all seeing? Are there needs that we can work on together? So in our very first meeting of the year in February, we talked about, might there be something that we want to do as a consortium project? I don't have a thing in mind, but we could think about something along those lines coming out of this aging work and responding to our aging population. How are you all planning or responding to these changes? Similar to what Paloma shared. Maybe we can go around and share anything that's happening in each of our jurisdictions. And if we want to talk about something completely different, we can do that too. So I just thought I would put those topics on the table. And also if there were other things from that state demographer presentation that, you know, maybe stimulated some thought that we want to follow up on and talk about together this evening, that's on the table. As I said, Nick shared that presentation again. So it should be pretty high up in your inbox, and I can put it up on the screen from my laptop as well. So I am throwing the floor open for conversation.
I would just love to see Paloma's slides after this, if that's able to be shared.
I shared them with Nick, and I can also send them out separately, but yeah, I will definitely do that.
Awesome. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the points that you brought in with that, because you know, Lions has just recently hit like a 10% affordable housing goal that we're really proud of, but there are many of us that don't think that work is done, specifically because we're looking at this aging population and how people on a fixed income like really need more opportunities. And so I'm really inspired by what's coming out of Broomfield in that conversation, partnered with this business development point that you pointed out, and how, you know, we're not just recruiting like sales jobs or like restaurants or whatever, like the idea of recruiting in these vacant spaces, more, what was the word? High quality employer recruitment. I love that. That piece just got my brain turning.
I could share with you, if you're interested, the audio of the community conversation from Lions. We held it at Walt Self Senior Housing, where we have a meal site, Redstone Cafe.
That would be great. I love that.
Can't do. What's your name?
Mariah.
Okay, I'll find you.
You know, I'm sorry, but you know, you're young, and I was thinking, well, and you're talking about the needs of aging residents, and I know that, you know, there've been a lot of conversations about, you know, how can we meet the needs of both ends of the aging spectrum, and, you know, aging people that have too much room in their homes, younger people looking for a place to live. You know, I don't know that there's a regulatory solution to that problem. I don't think it needs one necessarily, but it may need a kind of a matching service or something. And folks have been talking about that in a number of different spaces, and I think it's a really neat idea.
Definitely. One of my great musical friends lives in Lafayette, and she's in her 70s, and she often is looking for people to occupy her home with her. And a lot of the times she gets people in their 20s or early 30s. And I just love what it does for her in that respect. I mean, they take care of her yard together, so it hits that mobility thing, and just the conversations that probably arise hit this intergenerational gap that we don't see a lot of anymore. You know, with like traditional, like really traditional, like mixed families that like age together and are able to take care of each other. We don't see a lot of that anymore. And so I don't know how to like convince people that that's the way forward, but that is what I think is the way forward for sure. Especially as somebody who's personally like striving always to look for a mentor. Like it feels impossible sometimes to find one that matches my needs, and I look for that wisdom, but I don't know where to find it all the time. And so I love this idea of maybe some sort of like matching program, just
there
opportunity.
Is, I read about this in Denver.
Silver Nest.
But it was Silver Nest?
Yeah.
And you know, older people that are looking for companionship also, because as mobility wanes, you know, then you don't have as much opportunity to get out, and younger people that just can find a place to live, and everything you were talking about, that mentorship and relationship with somebody older, but and housing. So
Support in the home. There's a lot of benefits.
Yeah. Right.
I think one thing I'm seeing in the community, and I have some notes too that were provided by Councilmember McCoy as well, is essentially because a lot of our seniors are on fixed incomes, in order to access additional income. Many times that means obtaining a part-time job. And then we look at like, what does the job market look like right now and how competitive is it? Especially compared to like maybe someone who has like a college degree and is super tech savvy. And then you have all these like AI generated resume review. And so I think that's one barrier that I see in the community is like our seniors are not securing employment. And I think ageism is a real thing. So they're not even getting called many times. And I think if we could somehow create programming or assistance or I'm not sure what's available in the community. I do work within human services, so I can't think of anything currently. But if we could create something to help seniors secure employment, part-time employment, for one, it would meet the gap in the amount that they need either for food or housing, medical costs, etc. It takes care of that social aspect, so it gets them out and in community, and that's kind of that healthy aspect of just social, emotional, and then even physical. If they are mobile, then it gets them out, gets their body going, gets them moving, and so I think that's one thing as we move forward and consider like what ways could we help our aging population if they are interested and able to work. How do we get them into those positions? Are there job fairs? Are there employers that we can work with via workforce to make sure that these spots are reserved maybe for some of our seniors? So that's one thing. And then to the point that was made earlier, like how do we kind of combine, like we see needs on the early childhood front and we're seeing needs on, with our aging population. One of the things that Christina, our director of the youth center, put in here was they are currently working on a project, exploring a partnership to incorporate older adults into the early childhood framework, including potential training for early childcare roles. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that Longmont currently is exploring to see like, how do we kill two birds with one stone? Sorry for my environmentalist. I don't mean it that way, but how do we really meet the needs of the huge gap that we're seeing in the childhood arena for early childcare, 3 and under, and also get our, seniors out, maybe earning extra income, giving them the training that they need and the opportunities. And I think there's also just something that comes with like the wisdom that's missing, I think, especially nowadays in our society. So that's kind of one of the things that that the youth center is doing here in Longmont. And then just a couple other points, I guess, within the notes that I received. Our senior population is also increasing significantly. We're needing, or essentially, we're seeing increased demand as more adults age in place and require support. So modest rise in homeless seniors as well. So, food's gone up, housing continues to go up if they don't own their home, utilities, everything. And so with their fixed incomes, they're unable to stay in their home. Food security continues to be a need. So what I can say is within the city of Longmont, we are currently creating our priorities. And so basic need support is one of those things. And so can we change the market? Can we have an impact on inflation? Can we solve the housing crisis tomorrow? No, but what we can do is provide those safety net resources so that way when our seniors have kind of a down month or something happens, maybe an additional medical expense, we can help them bounce back up, remain housed, provide them with resources like food. And so that is something that Longmont is going to be prioritizing in the coming years.
I'll give you a little feedback on a few of the things.
Of course, yes,
Right.
thank you.
It's only because I can't contain as much things in my brain as I used to.
No
Forgive me. So we're both lawn monsters, just to
Oh,
point that
yay.
out. And you have a gem of
Longmont
Yes.
Senior Center
Yes.
in Longmont. So I know that there's some resume help on site sometimes. I know also that there's partnership with Boulder County Workforce around helping people and the proximity to workforce in the Longmont Senior Center is pretty good. So there's some things there. There are some models locally in Longmont where older people have stepped into the early childhood education side. So I can send you some of that.
That would be great.
From my friend at the R Center, who's their early childhood director over there. Okay, I think I tracked the main three things I wanted to say.
I just wanted to say,
too.
you've hit all the topics on the head, and I just wanted to call out on the employment front. I just saw an email today from our advocacy organization that in the proposed budget, they're completely defunding the senior education program portion of the Older Americans Act. So I think you've absolutely hit it on the head, and I just appreciate your awareness of that, because I think those kind of details are what's gonna get us to the next spot and making progress, because we're not getting it from the federal government right now, especially in that space.
Yeah, and especially in housing too, I think we were talking a little bit about like, what are we needing in our housing arena, and something that I was talking with one of the other commissioners as well as housing stock. We have families wanting to come in and get their first home, and we have seniors stuck in larger homes. And so as we continue to look at developments moving forward, can we create a space where it's housing that's available to seniors, that's maybe in downtown or easy accessible, easy transportation, close to stores, close to community main street to where they can get their socialization on, maybe the library. And so that's something definitely that we're going to look at. So that way, not only can we open the stock for families who are coming in, but also provide maybe more suitable housing for seniors. And so Longmont also has a ton of developments that are coming forth. And so I'm happy that we're having this conversation today, because we're going to be talking about a development that's coming down to Main Street, an affordable housing one. And so maybe we look at that as like, how can that meet the needs of our seniors?
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up older adult homelessness too. We've seen a pretty solid increase in older adults experiencing homelessness for the first time in Boulder County over the last 5 years. You mentioned financial assistance. When you have that one bill that takes your fixed limited income over the threshold, we do provide some funding to our partners at Longmont Senior Center to be able to fill that gap for folks.
The city of Boulder and
Oh yes. A lot of people get some of those funding, but that's one way that all of us can help prevent homelessness. That, and I think financial planning is a big part of it too. We talk about that a lot, and those services are available to folks through the county as well. So.
Perfect, thank you.
I do want to put a plug in. I pulled up the website, Silvernest. And it's based in Denver, and I don't know if they have target just different geographic locations, but they match roommates. They do background checks. I actually landed on the wrong page because this is inviting people to start their own Silvernest in their own community. But so I need to go back to a different page. But this is the aging in place, fixed income. How do I stay in my home? It doesn't help get seniors out of homes that are too big for them, so that they're available as home ownership opportunities for others. But it's. I wish more people knew about this, because it sounds really cool.
And we just haven't had a strong partnership with them because we're not in the business of like endorsing these type of businesses, but we are aware of them, and
they've been around for a while now.
They have been around for a while.
Yeah.
Well established.
And other input, I'm doing a time check. It's 7:21, and we do like to save time for just general community share out of fun, cool things. We know there's a cool thing happening outside right now. And there's always something cool in Boulder. But I just want to make a little more space for discussion about.
I'll just add that they didn't mention that they are going to be giving a talk at the Louisville Senior Center tomorrow at lunch.
Yes. Michael Chiplet.
I will be there.
I'll be in Allen's Park doing one at the same time, so we've just got two.
So I'll just see
Karen. Nope, she's not gonna be there, sorry. You'll see Michael. Michael's great.
Michael's pretty good.
Okay.
I'll be there, I'll be at Lafayette on Friday, though. Oh, over there.
I might try.
Yeah, you know, another thing, I think you still do this, which, no secret, I'm in the 65 plus crowd. When it came time to enroll in Medicare and understand what the options are, these guys, the AAA were fantastic. They know that program through and through. And so that's another thing, you know, you might want to send your constituents to the AAA.
So I just wanted to, it's relevant to this conversation, and it's also relevant to the general conversation of just how cities are doing. But you know, water continues to be at the forefront of my mind for a variety of different reasons. I work in climate policy, and as a former commissioner for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I understand where the majority of our water comes from. And I'm still in contact with those folks across the state that are seeing unprecedented losses. And so when we're talking about communities with a fixed income, and certainly the city of Boulder, I mean, I think, you know, our 65 and up percentage might be the highest of all of that. I'm not sure, but I'm just gonna put that out there as a possibility. I'm very, very concerned. So the city of Boulder is gonna be doing our integrated water plan update next year in 2027. And I believe we're in the middle of a ratepayer study as well. So that'll give us some information. But even in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, our water team has been pretty explicit around the unprecedented uncertainty related to climate change, the negotiations on the Colorado River, as you all know, have stalled. And for the city of Boulder, that's 1/3 of our drinking water, as well as the just the increased demands on water supply for a variety of different issues and reasons. So, you know, I know that our city has programs to help, you know, bill pay on energy and water, and that's wonderful. But I'm just really, you know, I feel like it's the elephant in the room that is just so much more existential than any previous councils have ever, and commissions and counties have ever in the state of Colorado has ever had to deal with. So, you know, again, I don't have any solutions, but I am noticing some decisions that are being made at the city level related to financial projections and tax ballot measures and all of these things that aren't considering water supply. And this isn't something like, oh my gosh, the city of Boulder is so bad. Like, no cities do this. It is historically, cities have not considered water supply in their projections. They think about it for developments that have to have 100-year supply of water, but beyond that, they're not considered in the actual financial fiscal projection. So that's something that has been lifted up as a concern. We're hopeful that the integrated water plan will allow us more information and also strategy and process on how we want to do that moving forward. Unfortunately, we're making decisions every day without that information. And again, I want to honor that it's not something that the city is doing that's wrong. It's actually standard practice, not at the city level, not to consider water supply. Just in general, that hasn't been a city's role. And so that's certainly something that's very, very top of mind for me. And I'm not suggesting we have like somebody come and talk about it, but I'm just curious how that water supply conversation is looking like for you. And this is coming from the city of Boulder has a robust water portfolio. We have more water rights than we use. However, that water is not always what they call wet water. It's like paper water. Apparently the sky is thirsty, so not as many water, as much water is falling to the ground. And so anyhow, I'm just kind of curious how you all are handling that.
I mean, I'm wondering, you know, whether we want to actually do, have that be a topic at one of our next meetings here of what all of our jurisdictions, you know, they're all water providers. And I, you know, there was an article in the paper about Erie, and I guess the mayor had to drop off, I think, Aguilar or Nick Geiger.
Right, Erie.
Miguel had to drop off too, but about their participation in the Northern Integrated Supply Project and what are all the jurisdictions doing in their water planning, because we're in a multi-year drought, and so that could be a topic for the next meeting. We can send out a couple of ideas for what we might want to talk about, but I think that's very timely.
And especially since there's so much of a relationship between all of our respective jurisdictions as it relates to workforce, right? Like, not everybody lives in Boulder and works there, but they're in Longmont, right? So I care about what y'all's life looks like. It's gonna impact our staff. That's all for me.
Well, we are approaching 7:30, and so there's room for any last thoughts from folks on the topic of aging and what we're doing, or next topics for our next meeting. Did we have anything planned already for that? Yeah. Well, what do you think? We could have just a whole series of presentations on water supply and how we're all planning for the drought. The county is not a water provider, so but we are getting we're getting emails from our farmers because we own a lot of water rights, ditch rights. And so for us, it's the effect on the ag community, and you're all municipal water providers, so we could send that out.
Okay, and I don't want to lose this silver nest piece.
Yeah.
It feels like low hanging fruit. I mean, just it doesn't, just to get something coordinated, and y'all are already in existence, and there's a plan coming up. It just feels like.
Well, I was going to say, we're happy to come back after the plan is finalized and out there in the world. I know that City of Boulder is also undergoing their strategic planning and aging as well. So I feel like that could be a great duo to sort of come back and report on what we found out and sort of the goals and objectives as well.
So I just Googled senior home sharing. There's something called AgeWise Colorado
that's a resource.
Yeah.
Like a resource directory.
Okay, that's so.
So I think the only other one, it's more of a co-housing up in northern. I think yes. Yeah. That's the only other one. And honestly, we've been talking about housing for years. Like I came on as an intern in 2012, and that was my project. So we've been talking about how it's continuously an issue, and we don't fund it directly. So we're constantly looking for ways that we can leverage or influence. And so I think the Silver Sage, that's right. Up in north, it's a co-housing. And to me, like Silver Nest and Silver Sage have been sort of the two players in that space. There hasn't been a lot of innovation other than, I would say, and this is veering into long-term care, but the green homes up in Longmont in terms of innovation and sort of senior housing.
In our staff, it's the financial assistance to help keep people housed, which can be short term. And the other thing that our resource specialists do is to help people with affordable housing applications a lot of the times, because those can be really complex. And just to be clear, our resource specialists too, the ones that we have on staff, two of them are in the mountains. So we have one in Ned Monet, whom I'm sure you know, and then Amy in Lyons, but together they cover both that northwest and southwest portion. And then we have bilingual resource specialists on staff, and then we're working with resource specialists in each of the municipalities as well.
But sorry, one thing we didn't talk about for the aging is the energy shutoffs and the impact that has.
Yes.
And so I just want to add that when we talk about the nest, when we all come back again, I just think that that's something.
I'll put that on my note.
I also,
that's a great point.
My other head is in emergency operations. So I was responding to the PSPX and PSF6 for mass sheltering for that. And that can certainly give you some information on how that impacted older people, especially those with DME.
And I did ask Julie Joseph to consider including like those kind of like medical devices in the on-bill thing, or just generators for the whole, but that it didn't, they were already well ahead of we were having that conversation. But I do think that there is some advocacy needs for because they can't afford the generator.
No, but And I think the initial program was to reimburse people. If you
Well,
can't
yeah,
afford it in the first place, then how?
Yeah, the Excel program doesn't meet the need of a lot of our mountain clients because it also takes a view into their homes that people don't necessarily want.
There's another problem that's emerging, and a lot of people have older houses that cannot support the electrical load of a generator, and it's been a huge issue for us. So I don't even, but it's like aluminum wire and things like that.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like everybody has now come alive. It's 7:30.
Yes.
Well, we have security staff that we'd like to let go home, and we'd like to let Nick and Danny and Lindsay and Carol. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for the conversation. So our next meeting, August 12th. So here, that's my stage. Thank you all.
Sorry, I make a letter.